Hi everyone, my name is Emma Biffy, and today I'm going to be talking about foster care and aging out in Canada. Doing a quick search of the word foster kids, these are the types of images that come up. Young children with smiles on their faces, success stories of children being adopted from foster care. When we think about these stories, we often think of the ones that end with a happy family. But these images and stories skew our views of child welfare in Canada, especially as many foster children become adults and don't get to experience this happy ending. Now, why is this an issue of human rights? The child welfare system in Canada has become a pipeline for poverty, homelessness, and violence. A significant part of this is due to aging out of the foster care system, where foster care children, once known as crown wards, lose their support from the government. Child welfare policies differ from province to province, but one thing that remains constant is how foster kids age out of the system. By the time they turn 18 or 19, children in the foster care system lose much of the supports that they've had their life so far. While many provinces still offer aid to former foster care children in the form of welfare checks or meetings with support workers, they're often left on their own 3 to 4 years later. This means they're cut off from emotional, social, and financial support. Statistics show that the lack of support and emotional trauma from the foster care system pose challenges for foster care children in being independent. Many face poverty, homelessness, and a lack of education. On the agenda with Steve Pankin, Dr. Kim Snow stated that 3 out of 5 people in homeless shelters have experience in the child welfare system. Additionally, 60% of foster youth that leave care will drop out of high school. Jane Kovarikova, leader of Child Welfare Political Action Committee Canada, has been completing research on aged out foster kids. According to Kovarikova's 2017 report with her organization, as many as 90% of youth in care may be on welfare within 6 months of aging out. As well, 80 of 1,000 kids who have aged out will enter university, and only 8 of those 1,000 kids will actually graduate. These policies are not impacting aged out children equally either. The legacy of Indigenous family displacement has continued beyond residential schools. In a 2004 article by Trocme et al., it is stated that between 1995 and 2001, the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs reported a 71.5% increase of Indigenous children in out-of-home care. Additionally, 16% of children under the age of 16 in Canada that were investigated due to suspected maltreatment were Indigenous, while only comprising 5% of the population. Poverty is an issue impacting Indigenous communities today. The Canadian Poverty Institute found that 1 in 4 Indigenous peoples in Canada live in poverty. According to a 2003 UN press release, Indigenous children continue to be removed from their families by welfare agencies that equated poverty with neglect. Black children are also overrepresented in child welfare. According to the 2018 Ontario Human Rights Commission report on Indigenous and Black children in foster care, 8% of Black children in Ontario were subject to a maltreatment investigation, as opposed to 5% of white children. The overall proportion of Black children in care is 2.2 times higher than their proportion in the child population of Ontario. According to 2020 reporting by Statistics Canada, the Black population of the country has a lower employment rate than the rest of the population, which helps us see child welfare as one of the many factors leading to more poverty in racialized communities. Not only is the foster care system funneling children into poverty, it's contributing to higher levels of poverty in specifically Black and Indigenous communities. Aging out has become even more stressful for foster care teens during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many foster care teens have been holding off leaving group homes or residences due to the struggles of being independent during this time, according to a CTV News report by Alexandra May Jones and Sandy Ronaldo. The pandemic is making youth in care feel much more vulnerable. Isolation is bringing back painful memories for many of them, resulting in a mental health decline, while some have also had to dip into more of their welfare money and savings to support themselves during this time. The child welfare system in Canada has remained largely unchanged for many years, and only more recently are we beginning to see changes and proposed solutions. The province of Ontario's most recent reforms to child welfare include a moratorium on aging out, preventing foster youth from being kicked out of the system during this pandemic, reported by Angelina King from CBC News. The original moratorium was announced in June of 2020 and was recently extended to September of 2022. The moratorium also means the Ontario government will be taking time to improve the child welfare system. Child welfare activists like Cheyenne Ratnam, pictured on the right, in conversation with the Toronto Star's Laurie Monson Bratton, want to put a permanent end to aging out and have been lobbying with the Ontario government to put a readiness-based program into action for foster teens. Rather than putting teens who are not ready out into the world with little support, a readiness-based program would allow teens to meet requirements to show they can be independent and receive training before they leave care. It would also allow the teens to make the decision for themselves when they feel they're ready to leave. It's too early to say whether the moratorium has been effective, and a readiness-based approach to aging out hasn't been implemented in Canada. One final solution to helping foster youth in Canada is tuition waivers for Crown wards, advocated by Kovarikova on the left. This was a policy introduced by the Ontario government in 2013 to remove systemic barriers for education for foster kids, discussed by Lisa Brown in the Toronto Star. The government provided the funds for foster youth to attend post-secondary institutions for free. However, according to Jessica Woolard, after changes to university funding by the Government of Ontario in 2019, post-secondary institutions like Laurentian and Western have now committed to provide funding for former foster kids. The Government of BC adopted a tuition waiver program for youth aged 19 to 26, and University of Winnipeg was the first to announce a program of this kind in Canada in 2012. There are some problems with programs like these. For example, how might foster youth be expected to qualify for programs such as these when they have been othered their whole life and face a lack of success? What about former foster youth that are finally getting back on their feet but don't qualify because they're too old now? These are points of contention explained by child welfare activists on the agenda with Steve Pakin. In BC, as Woolard notes, age limits on provincial tuition waivers prevent mature students from accessing education. Additionally, tuition waivers without social supports may not be enough to ensure students are successful, as many foster youth that attend post-secondary institutions don't graduate. However, the recent Ontario tuition waivers don't have an age limit imposed, allowing students of all ages to complete their post-secondary studies. Programs like the Voyager project, started by Dr. Kim Snow, had been doing tuition waivers before provincial governments took it on as a policy, and the program met with foster children earlier in their academic careers to support and advise them on their post-secondary life. As a result, the program now accepts an average of 25 7th and 8th graders each year and has grown to more than 300 members between the ages of 21 and 35. So child welfare organizations have really been putting in the work and support to make sure students are successful. Thank you very much for listening. And if you want to learn more, here are links for Kovarikova's Child Welfare Political Action Committee and Ratnam's Ontario Children's Advancement Coalition, which are two very important organizations.